just a couple of quick questions. I think in the line of organic, I think, and Brendan, the likes of Jack Nolan, he went round the country and had meetings, and I thought, you know, in halls at night, and I think that's how you got numbers up. He explained it in bread and butter terms.
Yeah.
And I think he's at it himself, which he was able to, you know, go through it. And, you know, in fairness, so I think a bit of credit is to be given there. Bill, just a question for you. When you were talking about water, with, I think it was Tim, there seems to be, and I don't know, like DPA, I was reading a report again this morning on water for drinking, and the first thing was that most of the water is fairly good in Ireland, but then we started with this line that this was wrong and that was wrong and the other was wrong. Is there an agenda sort of being driven by certain organisations to nearly, you know, blame everyone? I believe that farmers aren't getting a fair crack at the whip in this, because within 6 months with a visual look, we'll have enough evidence of all the sewerage that's going in right round this country into water that everyone is turning a blind eye to, but farmers are getting the blame for it, especially in phosphorus, because you cannot decide which is which. And when you see a river coming down along and it clear and then there's green grass, well, like, you know, there's something shooting into it. But you have looked at it, and Paul would be at it as well. And what worried me, and I'd like to hear your analogy of it, when the Department of Housing was in here, who were part of the setup, the lady that was in here, when I asked, the criteria that's being used was set by Brussels. And when I asked the question, like, would we basically be using that same criteria, she said, and I don't want to take her out of context, basically, we wouldn't be using that type of a thing, or that type of a sort of a system. But it was Brussels that determined it. Have you any fear that this basically target that they have set is basically nearly trying to, is tough to, or unachievable, that they have set something that no matter how we try, this is what I'd like to know, because, like, I don't understand the targets. You'd be going through all that. Like, they're nearly trying to make us run and run and run and run, and still we won't run fast enough. That's the worry I would have, and I'd like to know your opinion on that in the line of the derogation and about the water quality, because have you looked at some of the ways it's used, how they set up? They want to know the information from you, how many cattle is in an area, right? Some cattle could be within a shed or wherever, God only knows. But they want to know how many cattle is in the area, and then this sort of a thing is done up on a system that they have. But how foolproof is all that? That's what I'd like to know.
So there's many different questions there, I think, looking to deal with, but if I was to kind of break them down. First of all, structurally, it's important to understand that the objective of improved water quality was set by directive, agreed across Europe. And that's there now since, you know, the nitrates there since 1991, Water Framework Directive there since 2006, I think it is, right? So I suppose in terms of anybody setting a target, it's a target that's set right across Europe. And we therefore we don't have any, I suppose, suggested opportunity in terms of saying, well, it shouldn't apply here, okay? So in relation to the EPA's role, then they're simply reporting against that target. That's it. So I fully accept the evidence that's put before me. In terms then of what can we do and who's responsible, I suppose, in terms of impacting on water quality, a lot of that is done in modelling, okay, and there's no doubt about that. And if you ask anybody in terms of a model, they'll always say, well, a model has there's a flaw in every model, but some models are better than others. But I would be careful, let's say, with a narrative of saying, well, look, you know, farmers are getting a bad deal, because I can assure you the knowledge level is growing every day. It's growing at a massive rate. I spoke at an EPA conference, again, as part of that outreach in terms of water quality just a month ago. And there was a presentation, and somebody should look at it in terms of Law Pro and their capacity to actually establish load by area and what's impacting in terms of water quality. And that level, that knowledge is growing. So it would be wrong of me to, I suppose, to suggest a kind of an expected get out of jail clause for farming. I have been clear with people in relation to the map, that in relation to the criteria, it wouldn't be one that you would apply if you were looking at it from a kind of a purely derogation point of view. The inclusion of Leitrim has been used as an example, or other areas where effectively water quality was driven by phosphorus rather than nitrate, and that's not I suppose, in any way connected to farming intensity. It's much soil type. So there were other areas. So we've been clear on that, and we've been honest in terms of it. But I've equally challenged that if anybody was to bring up criteria of a different nature and propose it, it would not make a major difference to those areas that are in derogation in significant numbers. It would not. And it would be incorrect to suggest, well, look, if you designed a different criteria to generate a map, it would have made a difference in those areas where you have most, I suppose, common derogation farming, or most regular farming under derogation. The last question then is this question of can we improve it? It is, when I look at this, I look at it in terms of can we make improvements, and I'm clear, I think we can, working with farmers in terms of how far that can bring us. That's a challenge, naturally and scientifically, in terms of distance to target, but we can make improvements. We know, let's say, in terms of farm practice that can improve, in terms of, you know, the changes in terms of, I suppose, the loading and how that's managed in terms of, you know, the appropriate application time for fertilizer, for slurries. How do you, if you look at the progress that farmers have made, the ask was in terms of environmental, I suppose, demands and how they fit in. To my mind, farmers have made a tremendous, I suppose, improvement in terms of nutrient use efficiency by using slurry through less, more efficiently, which has allowed the reduction in chemical fertilizer. And that's supported by department initiatives such as multi-species sward support, red clover, support for soil sampling, etc. When the soil sampling programme is concluded, we will have close to 250,000 of soil samples have been supported by the state in relation to it. So that's what I mean about the collective ambition, with the objective of maintaining output, which was the original question, but we can make a difference and improvement in water. I'm confident in that, but that's not easy because there are outside factors. You will all have recalled that, say, recently there was a publication in relation to a very heavy water event, I think it was in Wexford, which had a profound impact in terms of phosphorus loss. Those are things that we have to get a better understanding of. But I can assure everybody, the knowledge in terms of impact on water quality is growing. It would be an incorrect message and we're not just saying this, industry is saying it, and they're now engaged with us in terms of common messages to farmers. How do we get practice change on the ground that's going to improve on water quality to put us in the best place in terms of arguing for a continuation of derogation? That should be our shared objective.